assembly instructions of how the pieces go together. And you've got this wonderful quote, material often obeys no idea at all and only wants to exercise its own rights. Which is a really interesting quote, because I can imagine the timber twisting and turning as you sort of try and make it this precise object. These pieces can, just in the way they'll naturally flex and weather and change, particularly in such an exposed climate, that there is a whole world in that as well. I mean, I think that might be going off a bit, but you have to put that text right in the middle, and that's slightly, and then more above that at the top, isn't it? But I know that you've been sort of reading about perspective and setting up, so that's why I sort of feel the rules, I want to almost be given a package of what the rules are, and the precision of the project isn't quite coming through. I think there's a precision that is starting to appear now. You're starting to make models of pieces in some of the drawings. I feel I want to push that further as a thing to engage with. I don't know, that may not be answering what...
It is a step towards it. The question is what do you do, isn't it? I was reading about Samurai, the church painter, the Dutch church painter, those things. Beautifully precise architectural portraits done in 1600 and something. And at the start of perspective. And there was a story about the description of it was that he didn't go and sketch these places and then he transferred them to the canvas. They went and measured it and then constructed a perspective. You see what I mean? It wasn't sketching, it was measuring. For some reason this was very gripping for you would set yourself up in the process of discovery. There wasn't impressionistic, it was out there in precision and measurement, and then it comes to determinants there. I don't quite know why I'm thinking that, but there's something to do with what you're talking about, measuring the landscape and the prospect of perspective, which is an illusion of construction.
Yeah. Initially, yeah, that is true. I just felt that when I got to the point of sort of thinking about really measuring perspective, I get questioning, do I really want to do that?
Yeah.
And this is why I think I wouldn't say it's got a bit lost, but I think I'm trying to maybe even subconsciously move away from that to a point. Yes, I am really not obsessed, but really I'm trying to push all the way through this focus on perspective, but I'm not sure I want it to be measured.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure.
But shouldn't the measuring almost become in the device itself, not in the view? I mean, that's something that you were sort of challenged from last year, that you haven't necessarily produced the detail piece from last year. This may be a way of really being very precise about the way the thing is made, and where, back to the material obeys its own rights, that you actually do understand how a piece of timber turns and twists as it expands and contracts. It's not a sort of uniform material in terms of its expansion and contraction, it will twist and warp. So you know, that might be part of your precision in the way that you make the instrument, but it's not necessarily about that. Would that be a good contrast to you not wanting to control the view in a very precise perspective, but early perspective little way than as early artists do? I don't know, that's sort of a proposition, but it's still quite
well, aside from it, it's quite difficult to work out the scale of some of the selections. It's quite, because of just the style and the shape of them. In some, like here, it's quite, I can't work out whether if I was standing next to this, if I'm this tall, or if I can actually look through this, or if I can stand back here, look through this.
That's how I
I know you said they are 1 to 20, but it's still quite difficult to actually get your head around. Even the photo sort of montage.
Well, especially the photo montage.
They look quite convincing. They are quite convincing photo montage to it. Difficult to work out.
But that could be one of its special characteristics, couldn't it? I can imagine a thing that looked like something when you got up to it, it was the same size as it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Monkey about with your sense of distance.
I'm going to say the opposite, actually. The drawing there's something suggestively realistic about perspective. That means that when you put two things that have different perspective together, it's disconcerting. And actually, that's the kind of reading I'm getting of this, and it sort of reminds me of, and it's quite ironic because these are all very sort of hand drawn. It kind of reminds me of computer drawings where you have a sort of imaginary three-dimensional space, and then you put a background photograph behind it, and no matter which way you turn the model, so it's up, down, skewed, sharp, sort of thing, the thing behind is always the right way up and facing you, and so you've got sort of three positions. So the sort of observer of the proofs, the background photograph, and the thing in between, which is kind of occasionally it's a kind of CGI man's sort of nightmare that occasionally actually clicks into technically correct perspective, and then it drifts off again. But it seems to me that this is kind of the positive interest inside of that, because what you've got is things that suggest perspective pointing in one direction, and then another thing that suggests perspective pointing in another, which is actually the background horizon. And I wonder how many iterations you go through that. As soon as you actually put it into physical space and go around it, you're kind of, I don't know, whether you're kind of losing something, which is an exploration of perspective on perspective. I mean, like we look at this material perspective, we're looking at a drawing which is describing perspective, how it works, and we're looking at the perspective in a way of measuring perspective, maybe, rather than actually experiencing it. So it's kind of an exterior position in this one, where we can see the construction lines, and we're not actually looking from the point of the eye in perspective. So we're observing this one, which is just a single perspective. We're actually looking from the view. But these are kind of a hybrid of the two. So I'd be interested to see how much more mileage you can get out of that. And in a sense, it's almost a pity that you go to something material, because that somehow sort of limits you back.
Depends on what you want to do.
Ultimately, I think that's why it's losing.
Well, you want to do it, that's why it's losing. What do you want to do? Because otherwise, you're not advised if you get stuck into machine.
What's his name?
Stuck into
Check the beard.
perspectives and do
I think he's
other
pretty
interesting suggestions.
Yes.
But the fact that she's mentioned Sarah, I was wondering what these things, how these things change as you walk around. Is that really Sarah? Which is
Is that what's interesting about his sculptural pieces is that there's a scale of it, really. The scale, I don't know if you walk between the atmosphere.
yes, it's called Mandy. Sarah is an iron beat and with denim shirts and strangles these iron sheets. Not really, but that's his persona. No, don't ask me this.
Perhaps that's not mine.
Maybe that's not okay, but it is very material. This engagement is very material.
His art kills sort of one person every 7 years, or whatever. Just in the installation of those rolls of lead. Got quite a good record.
But there's a whole bunch of those manually steel wheel drugs. And although I was talking about this is another one. The thing is walking around, and the thing changes well, moves around as you walk around. You can do it in the tape. You walk around Paris, things in the tape. Well, you know, you've seen it, and you're talking about getting for that experience, I guess. But I think there is an interest in the original proposition that there's a distant thing and there's a closer thing. And the movement of the closer thing is what's interesting. It's the distance. That's the same shapes against the back.
Yeah.
And so this is like a recreation of that. Because there's something that is on the front and something which is like dissonance. you see one in relation to the other. I guess you move around that one, and that changes, but that also changes that.